Hello everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clips, and I'll start with some announcements. And it's that season, holidays are coming very soon. And of course, some of you who've been around for a while know that we make some of the very best cookies in the world here at Wellness Form Health, and there is nothing better than sending a beautiful tin of vegan cookies to people who you love. So we have, let's see, I've got the little thing here. We have chocolate peanut butter no bakes, and this is actually my recipe, believe it or not, that we use in the Wellness Form kitchen, and fruit and nut no bakes, and they come all individually wrapped in a really beautiful tin with tissue and a holiday card that's appropriate for Hanukkah or Christmas and the whole 9 yards, and we can ship them any place in the continental United States. So do your shopping here. Let us send either cookies, or we have a whole lot of other gift baskets and many gifts that you can send to others. And I decided a long time ago that I wasn't going to buy stuff for people anymore. All the people I know have lots of stuff, so I buy them things that they'll enjoy, like food and experiences and etc. So that's the first thing. Second thing is new courses. We got a ton of them with special offers for the rest of this month. You can save up to $3,000 on our new programs. And of course, keep those inquiries about careers coming. I've had so many great conversations with you guys over the course of this year about careers, and there are so many opportunities in this field right now because a lot of people are sick and suffering and looking for help. So pampopper@msn.com. I'll send you an email. We can set up a time to talk and see what your aspirations are and how we can help you get there. All right, so this will not surprise you, this information I'm going to share with you first today. According to a new meta-analysis conducted by researchers in the UK, type 2 diabetics who eat a plant-based or a vegan diet have better outcomes than people who eat a more normal diet. Isn't it sad that the normal diet is bad diet? But that's considered normal. So the plant eaters do better. So I'll give you some specifics about the analysis because there were some things in here that I think are a little bit surprising. The first thing is there were 11 studies published between 1999 and 2017. 433 subjects included who averaged about 54.8 years of age in general. 8 studies included only type 2 diabetics, and then 3 of them also included people who were at high risk, had high risk factors like high BMI. The range of follow-up was 3 to 74 weeks, so some of these people were followed for longer than a year. 8 studies looked at a vegan diet, and it's kind of difficult to find studies that have looked at a strictly vegan diet, but they were able to find 8 that did. One involved a plant-based diet that just had one option which was added to it, which was 1 serving a day of a low-fat yogurt. And in 6 studies, patients were given some type of educational instruction in terms of what to do. The other ones kind of had to figure it out on their own. In all studies, there was more improvement, and I thought what was really interesting is it wasn't just in physical health, but it was also in mental health as well. There was a considerable reduction in depression in the type 2 diabetics who were eating more plant-based diets or vegan diets than the controls. And of course, you might wonder, why would depression matter so much? Type 2 diabetics often are depressed, and one of the reasons is that as their disease progresses, more and more awful things happen. I mean, diabetic neuropathy, blindness. There are, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there are more diabetics having lower limb amputations than war vets who have lower limb amputations in the United States. So it's easy to get kind of depressed when you hear about things like that. While both the intervention and control groups showed some decrease in subjective reporting of neuropathy and pain, the reduction was much higher in the plant-based group, and the control subjects showed reductions in nerve conduction. In other words, they may have reported feeling better, but from a clinical standpoint, they were actually getting worse, and which means that their neuropathic pain was definitely going to become worse over time as well. Now, there were some stark differences in reductions, for example, of hemoglobin A1C. The intervention group, the plant-based eaters, had over 3.5 times the level of reduction as the normal diet eaters, and they had twice as high a drop in the in fasting glucose levels. This is not surprising, but the intervention patients eating the plant-based diet also had reductions in cholesterol, both both total and LDL, and they lost more weight, about twice as much weight as the controls. In 6 of the studies, intervention patients were able to reduce medications more than controls, and some patients completely stopped taking all of their drugs for hypertension. So the diet served 2 purposes, not only to make the diabetic condition better, but also to lower blood pressure as well. And even self-esteem improved in the intervention dieters versus the controls. Now, what I found most interesting, I wasn't surprised by this, but the researchers wrote about, and I was so glad they included it in the article. They said that adherence to the plant-based and vegan diets was actually greater than adherence to the control diets. So much for the idea that this is so hard to start and so hard to maintain. Participants in the control group were much more likely to describe their diets as limited or constraining. And the researchers wrote, and I quote things when I think that they're significant. Overall, the results suggest that a plant-based diet can improve overall quality of life, psychological well-being, and chronic diabetic neuropathy in people with type 2 diabetes without changes in food enjoyment and diet costs. So it's not more expensive. People don't dislike it. It just gets rid of a whole lot of physical and mental problems, psychological problems that people have. So when you think about it, type 2 diabetes is very expensive. It costs every country, westernized country, a lot of money. It's increasing, not decreasing, and it causes all kinds of diminishing of quality of life for the people who have it. No reason not to tell every type 2 diabetic about the option to stop or reverse his or her disease with dietary intervention. All right, so now we'll go on to a topic that is just plain fun. According to a new report from the American Academy of Pediatrics, doctors should write a prescription for play at every visit, well-child visit, up until the age of 2. And actually, after I read the report, I think that they should write that prescription all through grade school as well. The report states that child play facilitates parent engagement and promotes the development of executive functioning skills that help children and set them up for a much more successful childhood and adulthood. Some of the benefits of play include the development of social skills, learning how to pay attention, acquiring skills to solve problems and disagreements. Kids who are playing, and if you've ever watched little kids play, they become completely engrossed in what they're doing, and it helps them learn how to focus on tasks without being constantly supervised. Now, the definition of play differs depending on who you ask, but I really like the way that the researchers defined it. They defined play as an activity that's internally motivated by the child, involves active engagement, is voluntary, and has no defined goals. Play is supposed to be fun and spontaneous, at least it was when I was a kid, and it's supposed to involve things like imagination and making things up. We did a lot of make-believe when I was a kid, and I think that really sets you up for a much more creative life. Children playing with toys tend to act like scientists. They look, listen, and they learn by trial and error. Through play, kids can learn to be creative, to take risks, to experiment, to test boundaries. In fact, I found this interesting. Play is so important that the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child has written the right to age-appropriate play into its child guidelines. That's how important they think it is. The authors note that school readiness is dependent on a lot of things, including social, emotional, attentional, and cognitive skills, which improve during play and lead to appropriate attention and behavior in the classroom. The article specifically states that pediatricians should encourage, quote, parents and child care providers to play with children and allow children to have unstructured time to play. The article also cites research showing that children learn best when they have control over their play. An additional benefit is that children who initiate and direct their own play learn how to entertain themselves and are seldom bored. And again, I think back to my own childhood. My sister and I were expected to go find something to do with ourselves. And we made stuff up. We played with dolls and Barbies, and we had stories and all kinds of things. But we amused ourselves. And if we were bored, our mother would tell us, go outside and play then. I mean, you know, parents did not hand kids things to do and provide entertainment in the form of TV and screens and that sort of thing. So I think we need to get more back to that, and this is a scientific report that justifies doing it. Now, on the other hand, other childhood interventions have been shown not to work as well. The article cited the fact that teaching math in preschool results in almost no improvement in math skills later in elementary school. In fact, according to psychologist Marilyn Wedge, who's a PhD, structured learning in preschool, which sounds like a good idea, actually is not and is a contributing factor to the increase in attention deficit disorder in grade school children. And she explains it in her book called A Disease Called Childhood very, very well. She says, preschool used to provide an opportunity for kids to just play in groups and have fun together. But now children are expected to sit still and learn specific facts and competencies. It's not really so good for all kids, but I'll tell you who really is at a disadvantage, and she makes a strong case for this in her book, and that's boys. And one of the reasons is they mature more slowly than girls, so they have more trouble than girls sitting still and learning things in preschool. Well, now kids enter kindergarten and first grade, and they're supposed to have competencies learned as preschool children, and when the boys show up and they don't have those competencies, they often start misbehaving. I mean, let's face it, if you've ever been in a situation where you felt incompetent, it was really hard to focus and pay attention and be part of the group. So one thing that Dr. Wedge reports, and I thought this was fascinating, is in Finland, preschool has gone back to being preschool. The kids just play and there's nothing expected of them. And there has been a huge drop in the incidence of attention deficit disorder in Finland. And educators point to this as one of the main factors, because the kids really just learn how to get along with each other. And then the formal education starts when they get to be about age 6. And that's when you can expect both little boys and little girls to sit still and pay attention to learn something specific. So it's kind of unfortunate, but the average child today is really preoccupied by screens and structured activities, and they sometimes don't know how to entertain themselves. I remember as a kid in the summertime just sitting down and reading a book for hours at a time on the front porch and that sort of thing. And we need to get back to doing that. Let kids be kids for a little bit longer. Gosh knows there's plenty of time to be an adult later on, and being a grown-up can be sometimes challenging. So that early playtime is really something we should let kids take advantage of. All right, that's all for today. As usual, pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy watching it. Hit that subscribe button so you can get these videos every single week. And on Thursday, you'll get to see another video that we filmed with one of our experts who appeared at our conference. And if you missed it, by the way, you can still sign up to watch the videos online, and I promise you will learn a lot. It's the next best thing to being there. And we were kind enough to not film all of us eating and enjoying all the food so that you wouldn't have to watch us eat because it was spectacular, which is why you want to come join us next year. But you can hear all the interesting things that people had to say as speakers and panel discussion members. So we'll be back to you on Thursday with another video, and then I'll talk to you again next Tuesday with more news.